We're going live. I believe we're live. I believe we're here. Hold on. So now I just need to figure out how to share my screen. Is the right? This one? Sure. There we are. I think we're all here. Yes, we are all here. Yay. Okay.
Gang's all here. Woohoo. Okay.
The gang's all here. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have one person watching. Welcome. So this is the Coach's Corner, where the coaches from Grace for Living After Loss come on and talk about different topics as it relates to grief and loss. And mostly we just want to make ourselves available to answer your questions, to, check in with wherever you're at and get real-time coaching. So tonight we are going to be talking about guilt. This is such a big one for so many people. And Monica and I were just talking about our Grief Relief Nation members about guilt. And I think, again, I know people have maybe watched this, but real quick, let's just let people know who it is that we lost and how they passed, because I think that plays into the guilt conversation. So for anybody, if you're watching and you don't know my story, I lost my mom to suicide, actually, February 1st, 2017. And then a year and a half later, I lost my son Quentin to a fentanyl overdose. So those were my losses. And Lindy?
I lost my late husband to suicide 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, February 2019.
Okay. And Monica?
Lost my son be almost 3 years ago to fentanyl poisoning.
Okay. So you can see we have a mix of spouse, parent, and child loss, and all of our losses actually were traumatic and suicide, overdose, poisoning, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of room for guilt in all of these situations. So I'll just let each of you speak. And if you're watching, there's a few people watching. If you're watching, feel free to drop a comment. And if you feel comfortable sharing who it is that you lost and the circumstances, and or if you're currently dealing with guilt around the loss, if you have a specific thing that you're feeling guilty about or something you're struggling with, drop that in the comments and we'll be sure to address that directly. But Lindy, I'll start with you. Was guilt something that you wrestled with? And if so, like, how did that show up for you? And then what did you do to deal with it?
Well, because of the circumstances, I felt very guilty because I actually was here at the house, and he told me to leave, and so I did, and then I called 911, and then I felt bad that I had left. Like I was trying to intercede, and they told me to leave the house and so forth, was what they direct you to do, and so I felt guilty about that. Plus just things that were kind of going on before that, that I kind of felt like, oh, I should have done more. I should have been able to help. I should have known more, so on and so forth. And then I started to kind of, the first few weeks after that happened, I started to grapple with it, and I was okay. I was like, okay, I shouldn't feel guilty about this. And then people outside, other people, some further relatives and supposed friends, laid the guilt trip on me. Like, how did you not know? How could you not stop this? All this kind of stuff. So then I kind of went back into that swirl again of the guilt that lasted for months, because I was listening to other people and basically feeling really bad about myself and questioning all the decisions I had made. And it was rough because you're grieving at the same time, and so then, and you have all this guilt and feel like it's your fault. So it's very difficult to move through your grief when you're feeling that way. I mean, at least it was for me anyway.
Yeah. Can you pinpoint, like, what was it? And was there any particular thing that you did or a way that you reframed your thoughts to help you move beyond the guilt stuff when you were dealing with it so much?
For me, it was basically I started really praying about it, and trying to look up scriptures about that referred to it, and that was what really kind of started to pull me out of it, because I felt like I was, like the Holy Spirit was saying, like, okay, this is you did not, this was not your fault, and so forth, and kind of countering the things that I was having in my head. And that was really how I kind of got past. I was seeing a counselor at the time, and she was somewhat helpful, but not as helpful, honestly, as what the other things that I was doing. So And I can't even tell you pinpoint a particular time. It wasn't quite a year. I mean, it was several months that I started to kind of turn that corner of the guilt. But I had to make a conscious effort, otherwise I just would have kept washing over me again and again and again if I had not done that.
Yeah. That's, I think, and Monica, and I want to ask you the same question in a second, but we were just having our Grief Relief Nation monthly membership meeting. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway is like, it's a decision and a choice, right? Like the thoughts that we think and the thoughts that we choose to entertain and engage with, it doesn't feel sometimes like we're choosing them because they're just there, right? Like thoughts just show up and we feel like they're just there. But once the thought shows up in your mind, you actually do have some say around if you're going to engage that thought, entertain that thought, and what you do with that thought, right? So to your point, finding other sources of information or scriptures to counteract those thoughts was a very intentional choice and action, right? That helped you to deal with those things. Monica, how about you? Like dealing with guilt, how was it for you and how did you deal with it?
Mine was tough. There was a certain amount of guilt that I felt, could I've done something different. I think mine goes back to when my son first had the tumor removed off of his back when he was 16, which is kind of what started the whole nightmare for him in a sense. There were things I could have done a little bit, sat on top of him and made him do certain things that he was supposed to do, physical therapy. I left it up to a 16-year-old, almost 17-year-old that, you're going to do these exercises and stuff like that. And it just kind of got worse. I mean, it took many, many years, I'm with Lindy. I had to consciously sit back. It was almost like one day it was like, wait a minute, I can't blame myself for all of this. And I have a philosophy, if everything is going really, really good, I don't want all the praise. So if everything's going to hell in a handbasket, I don't want to take all the blame. So I was like, some of this I'm going to give back to Joe, my son. And like Lindy said, I consciously, and then my thing that I say to myself all the time, and people will hear me repeat it numerous times, I made the best decisions I could at that time in my life. And I'm okay with them. Because I can't go back and change any of it, like we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
You can't. You will literally drive yourself crazy, I think.
Yeah. I think, and this came out in our earlier conversation, I always say, like, you're solving the wrong equation or you're doing the wrong math, right? Like, if we're trying to look backwards and think about what maybe, mighta, coulda, woulda, shoulda, you know what I mean? Like, what we should have done differently or how things, like, that's impossible math. Like, we will never know, even if you did X, Y, Z, how that would have changed things or if the result would have been any different. Like, we don't know that. So it's the wrong math. But the other thing is, and one of the things that we focus on so much is like putting all of our intention, attention, and effort towards healing and learning how to move forward. So we don't have the mental energy and time to be messing with all this stuff because we need all of our energy to be focused on, okay, how do I move forward from here? And guilt, just in my equation, like there's just not room for that. Like there's not thoughts about shoulda, coulda, woulda that are going to lead to a healing, that are going to help you to feel lighter or better or, more at peace or whatever. So just deciding for yourself what you most want out of this season. And hopefully my hope for you is that what you most want is to be healed and whole and have restoration of peace and joy. And if you're firm about that, if you've decided that for yourself, then you have to be diligent about what you're going to choose to entertain and what you're not going to entertain, and understanding that these guilt thoughts just are not worth entertaining. And I know it's easier said than done. And I know they come in and bombard you, right? And that's part of what we try to help people do, is learn what to do when those thoughts come in. How do we grab hold of those thoughts and reshape those thoughts so that they no longer torment us? Because it really can be a torment. I mean, guilt especially can feel like torture. And especially if it's an outcome, we can't change the past. Like I said, we can't do anything to change it. So to have these thoughts about wishing we could do something differently really is torture. All right, I want to just make the plea again that, hey, if you're tuning in, we're glad that you're here. Feel free to drop a comment, share with us with whatever you feel like sharing. Feel free to share who it is that you lost, how long ago, and any circumstances. And then, are you dealing with guilt? Is this something that you struggle with? And what do you do with the guilty thoughts or feelings that you have? I know for me, weirdly for me, and this might sound weird, but this was just my experience. When it came to my son, I really had no guilt because I know, and I knew then when it happened that I had done everything that I could possibly do to try to get him help and try to get him whatever, like the sleepless nights and the, picking him up and all the things. And so I just had a peace in my heart about that, like from the jump, but I will say with my mom, I had some guilt. I spoke to her the day that she took her life. Right. And so I replayed that conversation and I used to think, maybe I should have said something different or done something different. So it is a natural part, especially when you lose somebody sudden, and especially when they make the choice to leave, right? Like it's very common I think it'd be crazy if you didn't have thoughts of like Lindy said, like, well, should I have known or should I have seen or could I have done something to change this outcome? I think it's kind of natural in a certain sense, but we don't want to let it take control or dominate or whatever.
I think I take it also. We were talking about this earlier in Grief Relief Nation when you said to take those negative thoughts and make a positive out of it. And that's one thing that I would say in the last year have learned to do is it's like Lindy said, you consciously, and you also, so you consciously, there are times I have to just stop and go, Monica, no, we're not going to think this. And we're going to, I'm grateful. I'm happy that I had Joe for as long as I did. And I'll go back and remember all the good times. Yeah. And that's where I choose to take my mind when I get, those I get remorseful or I get really down in the dumps, or I, kind of where I always say, you're kicking the stone around the backyard type of thing. And I consciously, and I think that's the one thing that we need to make sure people understand. They kind of, those thoughts pop into your head, but you consciously have to say no.
Right.
No, right. I'm not going to let this ruin my day. No, I'm not.
Yep.
And I've got days I cry still and I think about him and a tear comes to my eye or whatever. But I choose to then take it and go, God, I also remember, when he ran his bicycle into a mailbox and I couldn't understand because the mailbox had been there for 20 years. He didn't see it. Stupid things that he did or silly things that he did. And it's a choice.
Yeah. Training your brain to be able to redirect is a skill. And this is a practice. This is something you can practice. This is something you can get better at. But understanding that you choose the thought and changing your thoughts if you want. And I think you mentioned gratitude. That's such a great one, like from guilt to gratitude. Like, what if you trained your brain that every time a guilt thought came up, that you're going to change the channel to gratitude, right? And really, I would encourage you, like, be grateful for yourself and something you did right. If your brain is trying to accuse you of something that you didn't do in the past, challenge yourself to think of 3 examples of something you did right. You know what I mean? Like, I should have done this with my son, but I planned an awesome 5th birthday party for my son and I picked him up from, you know what I mean? Like, because that data is there too, right? Like, there are examples of ways that you showed up and you did the right thing. We don't make the wrong choices all day, every day, all of our lives. It's just that our brain wants to do the highlight reels of the places that we fell down and the places we missed it. So, but we can I think they say that like for every negative comment, you need 3 positive comments to balance it out, like emotionally speaking.
Mhm.
So do that for yourself. Do that with yourself. If you have a guilt thought, I'm a fan of I just don't entertain them, period, because I just that's the wrong math. That's not fruitful. And so I just don't entertain that thought. That's what I've chosen, what I practice regularly. But you could do the switch it to gratitude and or come up with 3 good things to help counteract that one negative thing. But this is a game changer when it comes to grief and loss, y'all. I mean, how many, I know Lindy can say too, like people that we've worked with that it's years, like months or years, and they got stuck in this like guilt loop and they just stayed there for years and years and years. So you guys, guilt will steal your life. Like guilt will take time from you. It will steal your joy. It will steal your peace. And it does not care how long it keeps you captive. It will keep you and keep you and keep you until you make a new choice. And then you learn some of these things on how to get free from it, because it is a prison. It's an absolute prison.
You'll suck the life
And
out.
I think that people kind of mistaken where they think that it's the grief that's holding on. Like, I'm stuck in my grief. I'm like, well, you're stuck in your grief because you said you're stuck in your guilt. Like the guilt's kind of keeping you there, not helping you to move through the grief in a more natural way, like we're supposed to, and move towards that healing eventually. And people don't even realize, I think, that that's what's holding them back, that they have all these guilty thoughts because they become so, well, you know, neurologically, they become so normal to us that that's what's in the forefront of our brain all the time, that we don't even think to like think something different.
Right.
I mean, I use the thing that Monica, you know, for myself to kind of the same thing, like, well, I did make a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, there were things that I did right, and I did the best that I could at the time. Your assumptions I made that I probably shouldn't have made, but other things that I did that were right, and that were I was trying to help, and it just, you know, I mean, that just didn't work out that way. He made that choice, and that was what happened, and that was what happened.
Right. And this is a little bit black and white, but this is really how I see it. Like whether you were right or whether you were wrong is irrelevant at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't change the outcome. Like we were just talking with someone, she was trying to, it's like she's trying to decide whether she was right or wrong or whether she was good or bad. Right. And it's like, even if you let's say you messed up and you made a big mistake, because I've talked with and worked with people too that were at faults. You know what I mean? There are people out there that are careless or reckless and it results in someone dying. Okay. And so they have to figure out some kind of way to forgive themselves and move forward, because you can blame yourself and feel like the bad guy for the rest of your life and it will never change. It won't bring the person back. Right.
Exactly.
So somehow we have to learn how to stop entertaining those thoughts, because even if, let's say you come to the conclusion, like, yep, I was the worst mother ever. I didn't do what I should have done. It doesn't, all I can do is move forward from here. None of us can go back and change the past. So again, I just that's the wrong math. You're solving for the wrong equation. So if we can start to train ourselves about what we're thinking, to say like, is this the right equation? Am I solving the right math here? Like, am I asking the right questions? And if we can start to get curious about our thoughts and make sure that we're only thinking things that are fruitful and productive and good for us, and that we're only entertaining thoughts that are going to lead to good things, oh my gosh, we'll be so much better. And this isn't, this is life, not just grief recovery, but this is definitely a skill. Like it doesn't come naturally. I think we're all bent. I think it's like the survival, like lizard part of our brain that like teaches us to focus on the negatives, right? Because we're trying to not repeat mistakes. We're trying to find where there is potential dangers. And so our brain tends to go negative. So we have to consciously train it how to go positive. But we're here to tell you that can be done. Well, we got a thumbs up. So somebody liked something. They didn't leave a comment, but somebody appreciated something that was said. So we're not going to stay on too much longer. We just we're coming in on Wednesday nights to just make ourselves available to talk about these different topics. Let you know we are 3 healed people. We are 3 people who are walking in healing from grief and loss, 3 different timelines of a loss, 3 different types of loss. And we just really want people to know that healing is available, right? It's possible. It's available. You can have it. You can learn it. You can acquire it, all these things. We just want to be examples for people to see what it looks like to recover from grief and loss and make ourselves available for questions and comments and just offer ourselves. So we'll do last call if you're here and you want to share anything about your loss, or if you have a question about anything, but specifically as it relates to guilt, we're here. You can ask that. The one other thing that I know other people have done, I didn't do this, but if you're a person of faith, letting those things go and giving those things to God and then trusting him with them and not picking them back up again is a very useful exercise. I know, I do that with guilt for sins right now in my life. I'm like, just the other day I was talking to God and I'm like, God, I'm human and I screw up all the time. And he said, give it to me. He said, give me your sins, give me your mistakes, give me your hopes, give me your dreams, give me all the stuff. Like, trust me with all of it. So if you are a person of faith and you have a relationship with the Lord, I want to encourage you, like, even if you screwed up, even if you feel like you shoulda, coulda, woulda, can you give that to God and let it go and trust him with it? That's part of what he's here for. And I just encourage you to have your own version of that conversation with God for yourself. But I found that very comforting the other day when he said that to me, because turns out every day I find a new way to make a mistake or whatever, right? So,
don't we all, right?
Kelli, you're human.
But it's like, if we focus on that, that's such a miserable existence, right? Like, if we focus on the things that we feel like we did wrong, like, we're going to be miserable and not happy. And that's not the life we're designed to live. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we will cut off here, but I believe we'll be here next week. We'll always post ahead of time. We've been doing Wednesdays at 9:00. So if we are doing one next week, we'll post and let you know the topic. And also, if there's any topic that you would like to see, drop a comment below and let us know if there's a specific question or topic you would like us to explore, and we'd be happy to do that. All right, guys, have a wonderful night.